The cops pulled up to my family ranch with sirens blazing because the HOA president called me a trespasser on my own land. Standing there exhausted from a 12-hour drive, I was one breath away from being arrested. What that woman didn't know was that I'm the guy who's put hundreds of HOA presidents in federal prison. Act 1. The conflict begins. My name's Nathan Hayes, and all I wanted was a quiet break at my grandfather's ranch in Texas. After 15 years behind a desk in Washington, unraveling HOA corruption, I thought I'd finally found a little peace. Instead, I found myself staring at flashing red and blue lights at the end of the gravel driveway. The officers were cautious, their hands hovering like I was some criminal. "Sir, we got a report of suspicious activity," one said. Before I could even answer, she arrived, Margaret Williams, HOA president. Blonde hair sprayed into place, strutting in her business suit like she owned the whole county. She looked right at the cops, then at me and said, "He's trespassing. Arrest him." I kept my hands visible, pulled up the deed on my phone, and explained this land had been in the Hayes family since 1947. The senior officer looked it over and finally nodded, apologizing. But Margaret didn't back down. She leaned in close, perfume sharp in the night air, and hissed, "20 years ago your father destroyed my family's dream. Now it's your turn. You have 72 hours to leave." Then she walked off like she'd already won. The next morning, my porch looked like it had been wallpapered in orange notices. 47 violations in total. My grass was half an inch too tall, the fence an inch too high, my truck unauthorized. The most absurd one, a $300 fine for drinking coffee on my porch out of the wrong kind of mug. I actually laughed until I opened the last envelope. Handwritten in her cursive. "You have 70 hours left. I have buyers ready. Don't make this harder than necessary." I stood there gripping the paper, realizing this wasn't about lawn height or mailboxes. This was war. That's when Linda Thompson, my neighbor, slipped over with a folder. Her hands shook as she whispered, "She's been doing this for years." Look. Inside were photos, spreadsheets, notes, families fined into foreclosure, pets gone missing, gardens destroyed, people harassed until they sold cheap, and somehow Judge Harrison's companies always ended up with the properties. Margaret had been waiting for me, and now so was I. Act 2. Escalation and Turning Point. The escalation hit fast. One morning I walked outside to the smell of chemicals and saw my grandmother's rose garden blackened dead. Those roses had been planted from cuttings brought from Ireland. They were her pride, her legacy. Now they were nothing but shriveled stems in poisoned soil. I reported it. The deputy shrugged. "Vandalism by person unknown. Nothing we can do." I wanted to believe maybe I could outlast Margaret, maybe ignore her until she got bored. But then came the text message. "Saw you talking to the Thompson woman. Nosy neighbors tend to have accidents. 46 hours left." That's when I broke. I sat at my grandfather's old desk, head in my hands, wondering if I was about to make the same mistake my father had. He died of a sudden heart attack after his last fight with this HOA. I'd always believed it was just bad luck, bad timing. Now I wasn't so sure. Maybe Margaret was right. Maybe I should pack up, leave Texas, and never come back. But then I remembered why I'd kept those cameras rolling. I opened my laptop and checked the footage, and there he was, Robert Williams, Margaret's husband, creeping through my garden with a spray tank at 3 in the morning. Her voice on speakerphone. "Just the old roses, Robert. And wear the shoes I left out, 2 sizes bigger." It wasn't paranoia, it was proof. Not long after, Dorothy Kim showed up at my door with a casserole. She'd lived here 30 years, long before Margaret. Over tea, she told me everything: Margaret's cozy arrangement with Judge Harrison, how they drove down property values, foreclosed, flipped them for millions. And then she leaned closer and said, "Your ranch is the crown jewel. They'll do whatever it takes to take it." The final blow came from Robert himself. I found him in the courthouse parking lot, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking. He pressed a flash drive into my palm. I recorded her. Years of it. "I'll testify. And Nathan, your father didn't just die of stress. Margaret put digitalis in his coffee. She called it her heart attack special. The world tilted. My chest burned with grief and fury. She hadn't just harassed us, she'd murdered him. I made a choice right there. No more hesitation. No more doubts. Margaret wanted a war, she'd get it. And this time she wasn't just facing a homeowner. She was facing the man they called the HOA executioner back in Washington. Act 3. The Showdown in Justice. 72 hours after that first night, Margaret staged her grand finale, an emergency HOA meeting at the community center. The place was packed. Residents lined the walls, board members sat stiff behind her, and in the front row, Judge Harrison himself, smirking. Margaret clicked through slides of badly photoshopped images of my ranch. 200 violations, a failing septic system, contaminated water. For the safety of our children, we must act. Her loyalists nodded on cue. I waited until the room buzzed with tension, then stepped forward. My voice carried over the crowd. Interesting presentation, Margaret, but maybe we should talk about the night your husband poisoned my grandmother's roses. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, phones lifted to record. Margaret slammed her gavel, snarling, "You're out of order. Leave now." I pulled a folder from my jacket. Section 12, Paragraph 4 of your own bylaws says any property owner may attend emergency sessions. Unless you'd like to admit you're breaking your own rules, Judge Harrison stood, voice booming. "Young man, sit down before you make this worse. The HOA's concerns are legitimate." I turned and locked eyes with him. "Tell me, Judge, do you attend every HOA meeting or just the ones where your shell companies are about to profit?" The silence was electric. Then Margaret, desperate, played her final card. She held up a notarized document claiming my father had borrowed $50,000 from the HOA in 2003, now ballooned to $300,000 owed by me. Her smile was venomous. I took the paper, studied it, then looked up. Beautiful forgery, Margaret. Except my father was in Afghanistan in 2003. And this notary stamp didn't even exist until 2005. Gasps rippled through the room. That's when Elena Martinez, my attorney, walked in with 2 FBI agents. The recording I played next sealed it. Margaret and Harrison conspiring, laughing about my father's weak heart. Her own voice clear as day. The crowd turned on them in an instant. Residents shouted. Dorothy stood up and called Margaret out for years of terror. Linda waved her stack of evidence. The dam had burst. FBI agents stepped forward, reading Margaret her rights as her face drained of color. Harrison was next, his jaw tight, the smugness finally gone. The empire they'd built on lies and cruelty crumbled in minutes. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just stood there watching as the woman who'd destroyed families, poisoned my father, and thought she could scare me off, was led away in handcuffs.